What if the most important moment of your life always arrives after you think the story is already over? You've been taught to look for meaning at the beginning. The first impression, the first thought in the morning, the first choice you make when the world is still quiet and untouched. We call those moments important because they feel loud, because they feel like doors opening, because they give your mind something to hold, something to label, something to decide. But what if life doesn't work like that? What if the truth you've been chasing doesn't show up at the start of things, but at the end, when you've already relaxed your grip, when you've already stopped trying, when you've already told yourself, that's it, nothing else is coming? There's a strange habit you might not even notice you have, a habit almost everyone has, the habit of leaving too early, not just leaving rooms, leaving moments. You leave a conversation the second it becomes uncomfortable. You leave your own feelings the moment they start asking for your attention. You leave silence as soon as it stops being entertaining. You click away from yourself, softly, politely, like closing a tab you don't want anyone to see. And the mind calls it efficiency. The mind says, move on, decide, finish, next. But deep down, you know what it really is. It's fear of the final minute, because the final minute is the moment when the music fades and there's nothing left to hide behind. It's the moment when the room stops talking and you can finally hear what you've been avoiding. It's the moment when the storm passes and all that's left is the wet, honest earth, breathing. Think about a theater. The lights are dim, the story is reaching its climax, and you feel that restless urge in your body. The ending is obvious now. You can sense it. The hero has won or lost. The message is clear, and you think, I've got it. So you stand up. You slip out. You step into the hallway, already thinking about the next thing. But what you didn't see is the final scene, the last quiet exchange, the lingering look, the line that changes everything, the small detail that reveals the truth. The whole story was holding back. Life is like that. It waits. It has patience you don't understand, and it often speaks when you're no longer paying attention. Because the moment you stop chasing meaning, meaning has room to arrive. We live like endings are walls, like the last page is just paper, like the final breath is just an empty space. But what if endings are thresholds? What if the end isn't a closing, but a crossing? A place where masks fall away because there's no audience left. A place where certainty dissolves because the mind can't control what comes next. A place where you can't keep performing because the performance has run out of script. And that's exactly why the final minute feels so uncomfortable. Because it's not a conclusion, it's exposure. You've probably felt it in the smallest ways. A conversation that starts casual, safe, and simple. Then, right near the end, someone pauses. Their voice changes, the room shifts, and suddenly something real is about to be said. And you feel it. A tiny tension in your chest, a quiet alarm in your thoughts. You smile, you nod. You wrap things up too fast. You say, anyway, I should go. Not because you don't care, but because you do. Because part of you knows that if you stay, something might change, and change is the one thing the mind can't predict. So you leave, and later you replay it. You wonder what they were going to say. You wonder why you felt that pull. You wonder why the moment that mattered most always seems to arrive when you're already halfway out the door. This is the human conflict hiding in plain sight. We rush toward answers because presence feels like uncertainty, and uncertainty feels like danger. We decide too early, we label too fast, we end things in our mind before they're actually over, and the cost is subtle but heavy. Because every time you click away from the final minute, you abandon the part of you that was about to understand. You abandon the part of you that was about to soften. You abandon the part of you that was about to finally tell the truth. And maybe the saddest part is, You often do it to yourself. You feel an emotion rising, grief, loneliness, anger, love, and you hurry to fix it. You distract yourself, you scroll, you joke, you rationalize. You do anything to avoid the quiet moment where the emotion finishes speaking. But emotions are like waves. They don't arrive to drown you, they arrive to move through you. And the wave always has an ending. The hardest part isn't the crash, it's the calm after the final minute when you can feel what the wave was really carrying. So let's slow down right here, just for a moment. Close your eyes. If you can, take a deep breath in, slowly, and let it out, even slower. Now notice something simple. Thoughts are moving through you, even now, like clouds crossing a wide sky. Some are loud, some are faint. Some feel urgent, like they're waving their arms. But you don't have to follow them, just watch. Watch how a thought rises and then fades. And right after it fades, there is a tiny space. A small silence. That space is the final minute, and most people never stay there. They fill it instantly. Another thought, another plan, another worry, another distraction. Because silence doesn't give the mind a storyline. Silence doesn't offer a neat conclusion. Silence doesn't clap and roll credits. Silence just tells the truth. And the truth is usually simple. So simple, it almost feels like nothing. But nothing is often where everything begins. That's the quiet contradiction at the heart of this chapter. You think transformation looks like fireworks. But real transformation often looks like stillness. It looks like staying. It looks like not moving when your instincts scream to run. The final minute is the space you avoid because it offers no entertainment, no narrative comfort, no easy identity to wear. It asks you to be here without a mask, to be here without knowing what happens next, to be here when you can't perform your way out of feeling. And maybe, if you're honest, you've spent years perfecting the art of leaving yourself early, leaving your own moments, leaving your own endings, leaving right before clarity arrives, because clarity doesn't always come with a loud voice. Sometimes it arrives like a whisper at the edge of your attention. Sometimes it arrives when your defenses are tired. Sometimes it arrives when you stop trying to force the world to make sense and you simply listen. This journey isn't about chasing answers, it's about descending into presence. Not like falling into darkness, but like stepping into deep water and realizing you can float. The final minute is not a trap, it's a doorway into the parts of you that have been waiting, quietly, patiently, for you to stop rushing past them. So the invitation is small, but it's powerful. Stay until the end. Stay in the conversation 2 seconds longer than you want to. Stay with the emotion without trying to fix it. Stay with the silence without filling it. Stay when nothing seems to be happening, because that might be the exact moment something real begins. And if you can do that, just a little, then you'll start to notice a strange thing. Life has been speaking to you the whole time, not at the beginning, but at the end. And the mantra you carry forward is simple, like a steady breath in the dark. Don't leave your life early. Stay. Stay for the final minute. Because the story isn't over when you think it is. Sometimes, it's only just beginning. Your mind doesn't just think, it hurries. And maybe that's the strangest contradiction of all. Because the more your mind rushes to understand life, the less it actually lives it. There's a hidden layer beneath your thoughts, beneath the words you hear in your own head. And in this second chapter, we step into it gently, like walking into a dim room where something small has been moving all along. It's called mental impatience. Not the kind where you tap your foot in a long line, not the kind where you check the clock during a boring class. This is deeper, quieter, almost invisible. It's the impatience that makes your mind want to escape the moment it's in. Because the mind is a restless narrator. It doesn't simply witness what happens, it comments, it explains, it predicts. It tries to wrap everything into a neat ending before the story has even finished unfolding. And at first, that sounds helpful, doesn't it? A narrator gives meaning. A narrator gives order. A narrator tells you what something means, so you don't feel lost. But here's the truth. Your mind won't say out loud. It doesn't chase conclusions for wisdom. It chases conclusions for control. Because an unfinished story feels like standing on the edge of an ocean at night, wide, dark, and endless. Your mind looks into that open space and panics. It doesn't like not knowing where the shore is. So it starts building fences out of words. That person doesn't like me. This is going to fail. I already know how this ends. I'm fine, even when you're not. The mind rushes to label things the way someone might rush to turn on a bright light after hearing a strange sound in the dark. Not because the light reveals the truth, but because darkness makes you feel vulnerable. Silence feels dangerous to the mind. Stillness feels unproductive. Uncertainty feels like failure. So the inner voice pushes forward again and again, like it's late for something it can't name. And you can feel it if you pay attention. You can feel the way your mind tries to finish moments too soon. You're watching a sunset, and before the colors can fully sink into you, your mind says, "Pretty," and moves on. You're talking to someone you love, and instead of hearing their words, you're already preparing your reply, already trying to steer the conversation toward an ending that feels safe. You're sitting alone, and instead of letting loneliness speak, you grab your phone, open an app, scroll through 100 tiny distractions like handfuls of sand slipping through your fingers. Not because you're weak, not because you're broken, but because your mind is trained to believe that being unfinished is being unsafe. There's an image I want to offer you. Picture a traveler walking down a long road. It's not a bad road. It's not even dangerous. It's just unknown. The road curves ahead. The horizon is misty. The traveler can't see where it ends. And every few seconds, the Aichu-ye traveler stops, squints at the distance, checks the horizon, checks the sky, checks the map, checks their pockets. Anything to avoid being alone with the road itself. That traveler is your mind. Always checking, always asking, "Are we there yet?" And the road is your life. Not the version of your life that gets summarized into stories and labels. The real one. The one happening in your breath, in your body, in the space between moments. But the mind doesn't like roads. It likes destinations. It wants the neat ending, the lesson, the conclusion, the final sentence that makes everything make sense. Because if it can name something, it can pretend it owns it. And when it can pretend it owns it, it can pretend it isn't afraid. Now imagine something else. You're driving on a highway. You know where you're going. You can almost feel the destination waiting somewhere ahead. But along the way, there are exits. Many exits. Some of them are familiar. Some of them feel comforting. Some of them whisper to you like old habits. Take this turn. It's quicker. It's easier. You already know this road. And those exits are thoughts. Thoughts are early exits on the highway of awareness. They aren't always bad. They aren't enemies. But they are tempting because they're familiar. They lead to places your mind has been before. Worry, planning, replaying, judging, explaining. And each time you take one, you feel like you've done something. You feel productive. You feel like you're handling life. But you've also left the main road. You've moved away from the destination you didn't even realize you were heading toward. Deeper awareness. Because awareness doesn't live in conclusions. It lives in the open-ended. It lives in the not yet. It lives in the quiet pause after a question, where the mind wants to rush in with an answer. So let's slow down together. Right now, as you listen to these words, notice what your mind, is doing. Is it trying to get ahead? Is it looking for the point? Is it waiting for the conclusion so it can relax? That's the urge to escape. And it's subtle. It doesn't always show up as panic. Sometimes it shows up as impatience disguised as intelligence, like the mind saying, "I already understand this." But do you? Or do you just understand the idea of it, because the mind can memorize a truth and still never live it? So here's a small experiment. Just a moment. Close your eyes if you can. If you can't, soften your gaze. Take a slow breath in and let it out. Now notice the next thought that comes. Don't chase it. Don't fight it. Just notice it like you'd notice a cloud moving across the sky. It appears, it drifts, it changes shape, and if you don't hold it, it passes. Now notice what comes right after that. Maybe another thought, maybe a feeling, maybe a tiny discomfort. This is where the mind gets impatient. This is where it reaches for a label. This is boring. This isn't working. I should be doing something else. That's the highway exit sign, and you don't have to take it. You can stay on the road. You can stay with the breath, stay with the silence, stay with the feeling of not needing to finish anything right now. Because something strange happens when you stop rushing. At first, it feels like you're doing nothing, but beneath that nothing, a deeper sense begins to form. A sense that you are not your narrator. You are the one who hears it. You are the sky, not the weather. You are the ocean, not the waves. And the waves, they will always move. That's what waves do. But you don't have to drown in them. The mind fears open-endedness because open-endedness means surrendering control. It means admitting, "I don't know." And to the mind, "I don't know" feels like standing at the edge of a storm without an umbrella. But to awareness, "I don't know" is the beginning of honesty. It's the beginning of real presence. It's the doorway into something more alive than certainty. And this is where the chapter's quiet realization emerges, softly, like dawn. The most important part isn't the beginning of the moment. It isn't even the middle. It's the final minute. That last minute when your mind wants to check out. The last minute of a conversation. The last minute of a breath exercise. The last minute of a walk. The last minute of your patience. Because the final minute exists beyond the mind's desire to finish. It's where the mind says, "We're done," but life says, "Not yet." And if you stay, if you endure that final minute, you don't gain a new answer. You gain something better. You gain depth. You gain the kind of attention that doesn't need to solve everything to feel safe. You realize that endurance isn't effort. Endurance is presence. It's staying with the open sky even when your mind begs for a roof. So the next time you feel that urge to escape, when you rush to conclusions, when you interrupt moments with interpretation, when you need closure too soon, pause. Not to punish yourself, not to become perfect, just to notice. And in that noticing, whisper something simple to yourself, like a mantra you can carry through the noise. I don't need answers right now. I can stay. I can let the road be a road. Because life isn't something you finish. Life is something you enter. And the moment you stop sprinting toward the end, you finally arrive where you've been all along. Here, now. Most people think the hardest part of being present is learning how to quiet the mind. But what if the mind was never the enemy? What if the real challenge isn't the noise in your head, but the moment you notice the noise and still choose to stay? Because there's a strange kind of discomfort that comes after you've done everything right. You sit down, you try to focus, you tell yourself, "Okay, now I'm going to be here." And for a few seconds, it feels calm, almost clean. Then it happens. A thought pulls at you like a sleeve tugging in a crowded room. A memory flashes. A plan forms. A question rises up, soft, impatient, almost offended. Is this it? And in that moment, you can feel the urge to move, to reach for your phone, to check the time, to do anything that proves you're still in control. But staying is different. Staying is not forcing silence. Staying is listening to the noise without running from it. So let's slow down. Not because we're trying to relax, not because we're chasing peace like it's a prize at the end of a hallway, but because we're trying to notice. Right now, wherever you are, let your body be exactly as it is. You don't have to fix your posture. You don't have to become a better version of yourself in the next 5 seconds. Just allow yourself to be a human being, occupying space. And take a breath. Not a deep breath to calm down. Not a dramatic inhale like you're trying to prove something. Just a breath. Feel the air enter. Feel it leave. And as you breathe, notice what your mind does. It will probably offer you something. A thought, a comment, an opinion about how this is going. A small judgment, like a pebble dropped into still water. That's okay. Imagine your thoughts as clouds drifting across a wide open sky. Some clouds are light and thin, barely there. A passing idea. I should message someone later. Some clouds are heavy, darker. They carry weather, a worry, a regret, a fear that tries to convince you it's urgent. But here's the shift. You don't have to chase the clouds, and you don't have to clear the sky. You're not the storm. You're the space it moves through. So let the clouds drift. One by one. Notice a thought arrives, and notice it leaves. And if your mind hooks you, if you suddenly realize you've been lost in a story for 30 seconds, don't punish yourself. Don't label it as failure. That moment of realizing, that is awareness. That is the practice. You're not trying to become a person who never thinks. You're becoming a person who notices thinking. Now, let's bring in a second image. Imagine your emotions as a river, not a small river you can step over, a real one, wide, moving, unstoppable. Sometimes calm and glassy, sometimes fast and loud, and notice how the mind treats emotions. It tries to dam the river. It tries to redirect it. It tries to label it good, bad, useful, dangerous, as if naming it will control it. But rivers don't care about your labels. They flow. And the more you fight a river, the more exhausted you become. You end up soaked, struggling, blaming yourself for getting wet in a world where water exists. So instead, you stand on the bank. You don't jump in to wrestle the current. You watch. You feel. You let the emotion move through you like water moving downstream. Because this is what staying with the moment actually means. It means you stop trying to edit your inner world in real time. It means you let life be alive inside you. Now, there's a part of this practice that people don't expect. It's the part where boredom appears, not the simple boredom of a long day, but a deeper boredom, like your mind is used to being entertained, and when it isn't, it starts tapping its foot. It starts looking around like, hello, are we doing something or not? Boredom is the mind's way of testing you. It's like a guard at a gate asking, do you really want to enter, or are you just visiting? And right behind boredom, there's often another urge, the urge to check the clock. Maybe you don't physically look at the time, but you feel it inside your body. That restless question in your chest. How much longer? And that's where this chapter turns into something more than an idea, because the final minute isn't a minute on. A timer. It's a state. It's the moment after the urge, the moment after boredom rises and says, leave. The moment after your mind asks, is this it? The final minute is what happens when you don't obey. It's not dramatic. It doesn't come with fireworks or a choir in the distance. It's quiet. It's subtle. And because it's subtle, most people miss it. They leave too early. They treat the discomfort like a warning sign when it's actually a doorway. So, stay. Just a little longer than your mind wants. Stay long enough to watch the urge peak and soften. Stay long enough to feel the silence behind the question, and something strange begins to happen. The world starts to sharpen. Not like you're straining or focusing harder, but like your senses come online again. You notice the weight of your hands, the temperature of the air on your skin, the faint sounds you were ignoring, wind, distant movement, the subtle hum of a living space. You begin to see the background, the parts of experience your mind usually edits out because it's too busy chasing headlines, and what once felt empty starts to feel alive because it was never empty. It was only unnoticed. This is the moment where people expect insight to arrive like lightning. A sudden revelation, a clean answer, a powerful breakthrough. But real transformation doesn't usually strike. It settles, like sediment in still water. When the water is rushing, everything is mixed, cloudy, loud, confusing. But when you stop stirring, when you stop reaching, resisting, reacting, something begins to sink. Not because you forced it, because you finally allowed stillness to do what stillness does. And in that settling, you don't always get a new thought. Sometimes you get something better. You get space. You get clarity without words. You get the feeling of being here fully, without needing to turn your life into a constant project. This is why transformation doesn't announce itself. It doesn't kick down the door and introduce itself with a speech. It whispers. It whispers in the moment after you stop chasing. In the moment after you stop trying to fix what you feel. In the moment after you decide that this, right here, right now, is worthy of your attention. And maybe that sounds small, but small is where the deepest things live. A seed doesn't look like a forest. A single drop doesn't look like an ocean, but it belongs to something larger than it seems. So if you're practicing this, if you're sitting there and your mind is loud and your body feels restless and you're wondering if you're doing it wrong, let that be part of it. Let the clouds come. Let the river move. And keep returning to the simple truth of the moment. Breath in, breath out, not to escape your life, but to enter it. And when you feel the urge to leave, try this. Close your eyes for a second, take one honest breath, and silently say to yourself, I can stay. Not forever. Not perfectly. Just one moment longer than before. Because the people who change aren't always the ones who try the hardest. They're the ones who stay long enough to hear the whisper. And the whisper, if you listen closely, says something simple. You are already here. You don't have to chase the moment. You only have to stop abandoning it. So stay. Let the world become vivid again. Let the water settle. And when you open your eyes, carry this with you like a small flame protected from the wind. Transformation doesn't shout. It waits, and it meets you. In the moment, you finally decide not to run. There's a strange contradiction hiding inside almost everything you do. You want life to make sense, but the more you chase the ending, the more the middle starts to feel like a mistake. And maybe that's the real pain, isn't it? Not the hard moments themselves, but the way your mind insists they must be going somewhere. The way it whispers, this has to mean something soon. The way it demands a clean conclusion, like a book that closes politely, like a movie that fades to black at the exact right time. But life doesn't always do that. Sometimes life is a sentence that stops mid-thought. Sometimes you sit in a room with the same problem, the same silence, the same unanswered question, and nothing changes. No bright lesson, no sudden sign from the universe, no reward for your patience. Just time, just breath, just you. And in that space, the mind gets restless. It starts to pace like an animal behind a gate. It starts to pound on the walls. It says, fix this, solve this, end this, make it useful. Because to the mind, an unfinished moment feels like failure. But what if it isn't? What if this uncomfortable pause, This unresolved chapter, this stretch of waiting where nothing productive seems to happen, is not a problem to solve, but a truth you're finally being asked to sit beside. I want to be honest with you. There have been times in my own life where waiting felt humiliating. Not dramatic waiting, like waiting for a dream job or a big adventure. I mean the quiet kind, the kind nobody claps for, the kind that doesn't look like growth from the outside, waiting for a message that never comes, waiting for grief to loosen its grip, waiting for motivation to return, waiting for clarity like sunlight behind thick clouds. And the hardest part wasn't the waiting itself. The hardest part was the story my mind built around it. The story that said, if nothing is happening, then you are wasting your life. That story can feel so convincing. It can feel like a voice of reason. But look closer and you'll see what it really is. It's fear dressed up as logic. It's the fear that if you don't force meaning, there will be none. The fear that if you don't control the narrative, your life will fall apart into randomness. The fear that silence is empty. So you keep tightening your grip. You keep demanding resolution. You keep trying to wrap it up inside your head, like tying a knot that won't hold. But there comes a moment, often after you've exhausted yourself, where something inside you quietly realizes you cannot bully life into giving you an ending. And that realization is not defeat, it's the doorway. Because this chapter is where the story starts to fall apart on purpose. Not in a tragic way, not as a collapse, but as a release. Like unclenching a fist you forgot was clenched. Like dropping a heavy bag you've been carrying so long you started calling it normal. Letting the story fall apart doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you become passive or numb or lazy. It means you stop demanding that every moment justify itself. It means you stop treating your life like a puzzle that must be solved before you're allowed to breathe. And when you do that, something strange happens. Meaning doesn't disappear. Meaning arrives, not as a trophy at the end, but as something woven into the fabric of the moment, quietly waiting for you to stop shouting over it. Think about a storm. When a storm comes, the wind doesn't ask permission. It doesn't care about your plans. It doesn't check your calendar. It just moves, loud, insistent, impatient. The trees bend, the windows rattle, the whole world feels like it's being interrupted. That's what the mind can feel like. A storm of thoughts, a storm of what-ifs and should-haves, a storm of urgent narration. This isn't fair. This should be different. I need to know what this means. I need to know how it ends. And when you're inside it, it feels like the storm is the whole sky. But it isn't. Because above the storm, the sky is still there, unmoved, vast, patient. The storm can scream all it wants, but it cannot scratch the sky. And in the same way, your thoughts, no matter how loud, are not the deepest part of you. They are weather. They pass through us. But awareness, the quiet part of you that notices, that watches, that remains even when everything else is spinning, that awareness is the sky. And here is the turning point. Most of your suffering doesn't come from the storm. It comes from trying to end it. It comes from fighting the wind with your bare hands. It comes from insisting the storm must stop before you can be okay. But what if the storm doesn't need to stop for you to find peace? What if peace isn't the absence of wind, but the discovery of the sky? Close your eyes for a moment, if you can. If not, just soften your gaze. Take a slow breath in and a slower breath out. Now notice the next thought that appears. Don't chase it. Don't argue with it. Just notice it like you'd notice a cloud drifting across a wide open sky. Maybe the thought says something like, "This is pointless," or "I'm behind," or "I should be doing more." Just notice it, and then notice something deeper, the fact that you are the one noticing. That part of you, the witness, doesn't need to fix the thought. It doesn't need to answer it. It doesn't need to conclude anything. It simply holds it. like the sky holding the storm. That is surrender. And surrender is not giving up. Surrender is not defeat. Surrender is the moment you stop interrupting reality. It's allowing life to speak in its own language, at its own pace, without you forcing it into a neat sentence. Because the mind will always want closure. It's built for it. The mind wants labels and endings and certainty. It wants to place everything in a box and tape it shut. But life is not a box. Life is an ocean. Sometimes it's calm, and sometimes it's violent, and sometimes it's a strange stillness that makes you uneasy because you can't tell what's coming next, and you can't control the ocean by yelling at it. You can only learn how to float. So when you find yourself in a chapter that doesn't resolve, when you're sitting in the unfinished moment, when you're staring at a blank space where you expected an answer, try this. Instead of asking, "How do I end this?" ask, "Can I let this be here? Can you let the uncertainty sit beside you like a quiet stranger? Can you let the silence be silence without forcing it to become a lesson? Can you trust that some parts of your life are not meant to be solved immediately, but lived through slowly?" Because control can be loud, it can feel like strength, it can feel like responsibility. But sometimes control is just fear pretending to be wisdom. And loosening that control, softening your grip, is not weakness. It's maturity. It's courage. It's you choosing to stop arguing with the moment you're in. And maybe the biggest secret is this. Meaning is not waiting at the finish line. Meaning is hidden in the texture of the present. In the pause, in the breath between thoughts. In the way your chest rises and falls even when you don't feel okay. In the way you keep going even when you don't have a clear reason. So if you're in the middle of something right now, something messy, something unresolved, something that refuses to wrap itself up neatly, listen closely. You are not broken for wanting closure. You are human. But you are also more than the part of you that panics at open endings. You are the sky, not the storm. You are the witness, not the noise. You are the silence underneath the sentence. And this is where the shift happens. Not when the story makes sense, not when everything finally lines up, but when you stop demanding that life explain itself before you allow yourself to be present. So let the story fall apart just for a moment. Let the chapter remain unfinished. Let the pause be holy. And if you need a simple mantra to carry with you, let it be this. I don't have to force the ending. I can trust the unfolding. I can rest in the sky, even while the storm moves through. When you reach the end of something, why do you always feel the urge to leave? Not just the video, not just the room, not just the conversation. I mean the deeper habit, the quiet reflex, the way you begin to pack up your attention the moment something feels finished. The way you step away before the last note fades. The way you close the door while your own heart is still mid-sentence. Maybe that's the real contradiction of being human. You want clarity, but you rush past the moment it arrives. You want peace, but you treat stillness like an empty hallway you have to hurry through. You want to get there. Yet the moment you arrive, you're already reaching for the next place. And so we return, softly, carefully, to the question that started this journey. Not because we need an answer that fits in a sentence, but because some questions aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to be lived. The last minute was never about time. It was about you. It was about the moment you stop leaving yourself early. Because you've done that, haven't you? In ways so small you almost don't notice. You leave yourself early when you're about to feel something real and you distract. You leave yourself early when you're on the edge of insight and you scroll. You leave yourself early when silence starts to deepen and you fill it with noise. You leave yourself early when you're finally alone with your thoughts. And instead of listening, you try to escape the sound of your own mind. And it makes sense. Your brain learned to survive by moving, by solving, by controlling. by reaching for the next thing before the current thing can hurt you. But there's a cost. When you always leave early, you rarely receive the full message of the moment. You only get the headline. You never read the letter. Imagine a storm rolling over the ocean. At first, it looks chaotic. Waves rising, wind pulling at the surface, the sky cracking open like it has something to say. And if you only watch, for a few seconds it feels like pure disorder, like nature has lost control. But if you stay, something changes. You begin to see rhythm inside the chaos. You notice how the waves aren't random, they're responding. You notice how the wind isn't cruel, it's moving energy. You notice how the storm doesn't last forever. It arrives, it speaks, it passes, and when it's over, the air feels different. That's what your inner world is like. You don't get the gift of the after if you leave in the during. You don't get the clarity that comes when effort ends, if you never let effort end. You don't feel the quiet wisdom that rises when the mind stops running, if you keep hitting the treadmill every time you feel tired. So much of your life has been shaped by striving. Striving to be enough, striving to understand, striving to improve, striving to fix what feels broken. And again, striving isn't evil. It's how you learned, it's how you built, it's how you survived. But there's a moment, almost invisible, when striving becomes a shield, when seeking becomes a way to avoid finding, when thinking becomes a way to avoid feeling, when you keep moving because stillness might reveal something you've been afraid to see. This is why the deepest insights often arrive after effort ends, not during the chase, after the chase, not while the mind is shouting, after the mind becomes quiet, not when you force an answer, when you finally stop forcing. Have you ever noticed that the most honest thoughts come when you're not trying to be impressive? The most healing tears come when you stop holding them back. The most peaceful breath comes after you stop trying to breathe correctly. It's like the universe, like your nervous system, like your soul, waits for you to stop gripping so tightly before it speaks. Because presence is not something you achieve. Presence is something you allow. And allowance requires staying. Staying with the final seconds. Staying with the silence after the conversation. Staying with the feeling after the distraction wears off. Staying when the mind says, "Okay, we're done here," even though something deeper is still unfolding. So let's do something small right now. Nothing dramatic, nothing complicated, just an experiment. A gentle turning inward. Close your eyes if you can. If you can't, soften your gaze. Take a slow breath in and let it out like you're setting down a heavy bag you didn't realize you were carrying. Now notice the mind, not to judge it, not to fix it, just to notice. Thoughts will come like clouds. Some will be dark, some will be bright. Some will move fast, like wind-driven shapes. Some will hover, heavy and slow. The mind will do what it does, and you, just for this moment, don't have to chase any of it. You don't have to argue with your thoughts. You don't have to believe them. You don't have to solve them. Just watch them pass. Feel how strange it is at first. The urge to do something, the itch to move on, the part of you that wants to check out, to leave, to finish. That reflex is old. It has history. It has reasons. But you are not that reflex. You are the one who can stay. And staying, at first, might feel uncomfortable. It might feel like standing at the edge of a deep river at night, not knowing how cold the water is, not knowing what you'll feel if you step in. Your mind will offer 1,000 exits. It will say, "This is pointless." It will say, "Let's do something productive." It will say, "We already understand this." But understanding isn't the same as being here. The world has taught you to treat your attention like a currency. Spend it wisely, invest it, make it produce something, but there is a kind of attention that isn't transactional. It isn't trying to gain, it's simply meeting life as it is. This is where the final minute reveals itself, because the final minute is that moment, quiet, uncelebrated, when you choose not to abandon yourself. It's the moment you don't rush to the next distraction, the moment you don't close the door too quickly, the moment you don't leave your own experience halfway through. It's the minute you stay long enough for the water to settle, long enough for the dust in the mind to fall, long enough for your body to unclench, long enough for the truth to rise on its own, like the moon appearing when the clouds finally move. And here's what's beautiful. Presence doesn't demand that you be perfect. It doesn't demand that your thoughts disappear. It doesn't demand that you feel peaceful all the time. Presence simply asks you to stop running, to stop leaving early, to stop treating your inner world like a place you only visit when everything is clean. Because your life isn't happening only in the moments you understand. Your life is happening in the moments you're tempted to escape. In the pause after the laugh, in the quiet after the noise, in the breath after the effort, in the minute you thought was nothing but was actually everything. So when you feel that familiar urge to leave, when you're done with the meditation, done with the book, done with the conversation, done with the day, try something new. Stay 10 seconds longer. Not as a rule, not as a challenge, as a kindness. Stay as if you're telling your own mind, I'm not abandoning you. Stay as if you're telling your own heart, finish what you were saying. Stay as if you're telling the present moment, I'm here, I'm not rushing past you. Because you don't need another technique. You don't need another answer. Sometimes you just need to remain. And now, we'll end the way we began. Not with instruction, not with pressure, with space, with a quiet mantra offered slowly, like a hand on your shoulder in the dark. I stay, I listen, I allow what is. And as the sound of these words fades, notice what your mind does. Notice what your body does. Notice the small, almost invisible shift that happens when you don't leave the moment early. Just remain a little longer, because the end was never the point. Presence was, and you're already here.